Hey guys, yeah, I'm back. A lot of things have happened since the last time I did an episode of the GC. A lot of things. I've moved. Oh yeah, I got married. That's a pretty big thing. But you know, when I started this GC video series a number of years ago, way back in 2011, I was going through a unique time in my life. I'd just left a church that I'd been attending for 20 years. I'd been wearing a lot of hats there, and circumstances dictated a much needed change for me. But I had no idea just how much my life would change, and how much this video ministry would play a part. So, as I move ahead into this video ministry's third season, finally, I think it's important to look back at where it started and why. Moving forward into our lives, it's sometimes crucial to remember where we've been and what God has brought us through. Now, if you have followed the GC series at all, then you probably heard me say once or twice how much of an impact the church at Chapel Hill's online services had on me while I was without a church home for several months. Now, before all that, God was doing a work in my life. As I said, I was wearing a lot of hats in the church previously. I had many responsibilities that just plain wore me out. Handling church finances, for example, paying the bills and such, was probably one of my least favorite and one of the most stressful duties that I had. And God knew that I needed a break. Well, truth be told, I'd begun going to church for some wrong reasons, often just going through the motions, in fact, and not really serving Him to my potential because I was having to do things like the finances that I truly hated doing. And as long as I was stuck in this cycle, I wasn't doing anyone, much less His kingdom, any good at all. After leaving, I knew that I had to maintain my relationship with God and stay rooted in His Word, so He brought to mind an idea that I'd been mulling over for a while but never really had the time to do, and that was starting an online video ministry. Now, I suddenly had the time because I wasn't going to church anymore, and boom, so began the series that I called the GC. You see, it was actually through the process of making and producing these videos that I discovered how much I really enjoyed it. The slow and often tedious work involved in recording and editing and putting all the finishing touches on each video was something I actually loved. And God had put that ability and desire within me, and over time, I'd like to think I've gotten better at it, because of Him, of course. Now, when you add the influence of Chapel Hill's online church services that I began to watch regularly, and God was training me for something new and exciting. He had a work He wanted me to do, and He has been ever faithful to equip me for His purposes. Romans 8:28 says this, "And we know that God works all things together for the good of those who love Him and have been called according to His purpose." Now, after 8 or 9 months out of an actual church, God continued to orchestrate the events of my life. It was then that I was actually invited to go to attend a men's breakfast with some of the men from Grace Point Community Church. Now, that was the same church that I had left many months before, and for some reason, I felt inclined to go. During the breakfast, at some point, they began talking about things they were wanting to do as the church was going through a kind of a relaunch. Someone mentioned the word bulletin during the conversation, and a light went on in my head. You see, years earlier, while working as a sound technician in the church, I had contemplated the idea of a sort of audio bulletin that would play over the sound system prior to a service, and I ended up dismissing it because people's attention isn't effectively drawn by some disembodied voice over a speaker. But you tend to pay more attention to something that you see as well as hear. And in those days, we weren't equipped for or even thinking about doing any video. But during those months away from the church, remember, God had prompted me to start working with creating videos, these videos. And I'd seen in an online stream service from Chapel Hill that they did a lot of video announcements. So when the word bulletin was spoken at this men's breakfast, I immediately thought of doing a video bulletin. And when I mentioned the idea to them, well, they all loved it. But you see, now I found myself in a peculiar situation. Here I was practically volunteering to head up a project for the church, a church that I didn't really think I was even a part of anymore, and hadn't been for months, really. Talk about divine orchestration. But even as I wondered why in the world I was pitching this idea to these men, God was reassuring me that He had it all well in hand. Well, that all happened on a Saturday morning, and it was the very next day that God drove the point home to me, literally. I got up and began what had become my regular Sunday morning routine. Grabbed a little breakfast and sat down in my living room to watch the Church at Chapel Hill service online. With my computer hooked up to the big screen TV, I entered into worship. I got blessed as usual, and all the while, God was preparing my heart, little beknownst to me, to hear a particular message from Him on that very morning. This was Chapel Hill's 9 a.m. service, and as I mentioned in Season 2, Episode 3,
as Pastor Dave began to preach, in the middle of the sermon, he stopped and said, it's great that we can stream these services online. It's good for when you can't make it out to church. Then looking square into the camera, he said, but sometimes you just need to be here.
Well, I got the message loud and clear, and there was no doubt in my mind where I needed to go. I got up, got dressed, got myself over to Grace Point in time for the 11 a.m. service, and I've been attending there ever since. More than that, God has strategically placed me where I can minister in ways I had never imagined possible before. I actually wear more hats now than I did before, but there's a big difference. I'm doing things that I enjoy, following desires that God gave me, and utilizing tools that He equipped me with during that time of training, and He's still teaching me new things. This is the most fulfilled I've ever been, and the most excited I've been about doing the Lord's work. And I praise God and give Him thanks for the work He's done and is still doing in my life and in my church. Now, as we move forward, it is my prayer that God's blessings are upon each of your lives as they've been on mine. I don't have lots of money or drive an expensive car or live in a luxurious house, but I am richly blessed because I serve a faithful God. One of those rich blessings I have right now is a wonderful wife that I love dearly. I thank God for these blessings every single day. And this is what the psalmist meant when he said these words in Psalm chapter 50, verses 9 through 11. I have no need of a bull from your stall or of goats from your pens, for every animal in the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird in the mountains, and the insects in the fields are mine. You see, our God is a big and generous God, and He's not in the habit of withholding His blessings from those that He loves. Remember Matthew 7:7 says this, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. Now, I've spent some time looking back before moving forward with the GC series again, which, by the way, I am super excited to be doing this again, trust me. But I would like for you to also take a little bit of time to look back and to see where you've been and what God has brought you through in the last few years. And may His blessings indeed be yours in the time that lies ahead.
Sometimes you just need to be here.